Okay, 8.1b. So I wanted to do just a video for this one because it's still using Pythagorean theorem, and it's kind of quick as well. There's really only one thing you do mathematically, and then from there, it's just analyzing the math you've done. So this lesson, again, is going to be using Pythagorean theorem, but it's the converse. We've talked about converse before. In math, when we talk about a converse of something, it means to reverse it. So Pythagorean theorem said that in a right triangle, this is true. The converse says, if this is true, then it's a right triangle. So that's what we mean by switch. Again, first it was right triangle, then this is true. Flip-flopping that, if this is true, then right triangle. That's all that means. And the reason why we use this is we can do this math and figure out for certain if something is a right angle. This is really important in construction. Again, right angles are everywhere in construction. So they do this math often to figure out, okay, did I actually make a right angle? If this math is true, then yeah, I did make a right angle. We can estimate what a right angle might look like, but this is how you know for certain. Now, there's three possibilities. Either it is a right triangle when this is true. There's a reason why they flipped the c squared to this side, and I'll talk about that. This is still a squared plus b squared equals c squared. It's just flipped. So guaranteed it's a right triangle if this is true. We have an acute triangle for, if you want to add a little note here, acute, remember, means less than 90. So acute means less than. And we have an obtuse triangle if it's greater than. So this will make more sense in the problems. But again, think acute, less than, obtuse, greater than. Yeah, we should understand that. And again, equal to right triangle. So let's go ahead and look at example 1. We'll do a couple problems here. It says the triangle appears to be a right triangle, right? We might look at that and go, yeah, I think that's a right angle. Tell whether it is or not. So what we have to do is we need to compare your c squared to your a squared plus b squared. Now again, there's a reason why I write it this way. The c squared is always going to go first when we do this type of problem because it will allow you to come to the conclusion a little bit easier. So all we have to do is we need to compare both sides. Now, my c squared needs to be the largest side. I will tell you that this is going to end up being the largest side. You can go to your calculator. We can actually even put that in and see what it is. 113, whoops. 113 as a decimal is, do I have a fraction to decimal button? Really? There we go. Dang it. Okay. I gotta cut this out. That's irritating. It's going to be the biggest side. We can see what this is as a decimal, for Pete's sake. Depending on the calculator you're using, sometimes it doesn't tell you what it is as a decimal. Square root 113. Fraction to decimal, come on. Okay, there we go. So as a decimal, this is about 10.6. So this is your biggest side. This has to be C. That comes important when you're just given three numbers. It's hard to tell like which one should be considered the hypotenuse. The biggest number is C. And again, if we want to label that here, biggest number is going to go in this column. Now we got to be careful though. It is not just A plus B equals C, right? It's A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So my C is the square root of 113. I'm going to put it here. I'm going to put it in parentheses. And I need to square it. Because again, just C is the square root of 113. And I need C squared, 113 squared. So I'm going to leave that there. So this is my A and my B then. So I'm going to go ahead and write 8 squared plus 7 squared. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to see what each side equals and then compare them. So let's go ahead and go to our calculator, plug in each side and leave them separately. So what is the square root of 113 squared? This actually ends up being 113, and there's a reason for that, right? If I have a square root and a square, those cancel each other out, right? So that should be 113. 8 squared, we should get, this is 64 plus 49. Or again, I can already just add those two together right off the bat. We get 113. So are these equal to each other? Is this one less than or greater than? What do we think? Well, they're equal to, right? 113 equals 113. So what this tells us is because they are equal, it is a right triangle. This only works. Right triangle. This only works for right triangles. If it is not the same thing on both sides, it's a different kind of triangle. So again, what we're going to do is we're going to set it this way each time. C squared on one side, a squared plus b squared on the other. Compare and see what we get. Let's go ahead and look at example 4. We're going to skip 2 though, actually. So take a second in your packet and skip to example 4. We're going to skip the rest of them. So we're going to see, again, if we can classify this as acute, right, or obtuse. So we're actually just going to skip there. So we're going to set this up. Again, c squared is going to go first, and then I'm going to have a squared plus b squared. Now again, c has to be your biggest side. No matter what order these are in, c is your biggest side. So which of these is going to be c? The 86. Not because it's the last one, but because it's the biggest side. So I'm going to put 86 squared here. And then this is going to be my a and my b. Again, those can flip-flop. We know that. Be very careful that, again, we're squaring this, right? 38 squared, 77 squared. Take a second in your calculator and get what these things are. What's 86 squared? What's 38 squared plus 77 squared? Okay, 86 squared. Okay, so we got some big numbers here. This is 7396. And I'm going to go ahead and just do this all together because I can do that and save myself some time. This is 7373. Okay, so now we need to compare them. Are they equal? No, these are not the same thing. What we need to think then is this one bigger or less than this one? What do we think? Is the c squared bigger or smaller? It's bigger. This as an inequality sign, that's the greater than symbol because the bigger side, the open side, yeah, goes on the bigger side. So it is c squared is greater than. That's again what that sign means. What this means is it's not a right triangle because in a right triangle, they're equal and this is not equal. So if c squared is greater than, what you need to think is greater than obtuse. This means it is going to be an obtuse triangle because again, that means that we're going to be opening greater than 90, right? Obtuse is greater than 90. So c squared greater than obtuse. Try it again. So same thing, lay this out, c squared, a squared plus b squared. Be very careful, look carefully. Go ahead and plug in what has to be your c, what's going to be your a and b, and try and go from there. Okay, 37.5, this is going to be c, not because, it's the last one, but because it's the biggest. Even if they gave me 37.5 first, that doesn't matter, right? Whatever is the biggest one. Then a is 10.5 squared, and b is 36.5 squared. Careful. Okay, so now we go to our calculator. We get what these two things are. Let's go ahead and do that. So 37.5 squared, I got 1406.25. I'm going to not round this because I need to make sure it's exactly the same. If I round it, it might not look exactly the same, and it needs to be exactly the same. Okay, and here I got 144.2.5. Okay, so now let's compare. What's going to go in between? Is this going to be an equal than sign, a less than sign, or a greater than sign? Well, c squared is less than the other side, right? So now what this means, again, it can't be a right triangle because that would need to be equal. Less than goes with acute. Again, acute is an angle less than 90. So that's why you want to think less than acute. Okay, I want you guys to try it just one more time, just to make sure you've got this down. C squared to the whole thing, a squared plus b squared. Yeah, so plug in your c squared, plug it in, And then see if you can write at the end, is this acute, right, or obtuse? Try to get through the whole thing. Okay, once again, C has to be 24 squared, careful. Not because it is the last number, but because it is the biggest. Be careful. In your homework, they move the numbers around. Biggest has to be C. And then I have 8 squared plus 18 squared. Okay, checking this real quick. You should have already done all of this. So 24 squared, we should get 576. 8 squared plus 18 squared, I've got 388. Okay. So definitely not equal, so definitely not right. I'm looking, is C squared bigger or smaller? It's bigger, that's greater than. So again, I think greater than, I think obtuse. Greater than obtuse. Bigger than 90, right? So that's all this is going to be. Each time you just check this math, and then depending on how they compare, it's either acute, less than, right, equal to, obtuse is greater than.